Shalom, this is Avi Lipkin. I don't remember how many YouTubes we've made, but we've made a lot of them. We are now at the 20th of May, and I'm giving the most recent update. Important of all, my seventh book is now being printed in the United States. By June 1st, it should be available. We are taking orders already from the website, vicmord, VICMORD.com. The book is almost finished with the printing, and I will be in the States in 2 weeks, and there will be many conferences, and I'll be driving cross country. The two primary points I wanted to talk about today, the first YouTube will be about ISIS and the Sunnis versus the Shiites, the eventual fall of the Shiites, followed by the self-destruction of the Sunnis themselves. The second subject in the next YouTube will be about terrorism, imminent terrorism in the United States, and the plot to kill Jews and Christians in massive numbers in the United States, Canada, Europe, Latin America. So look for the other YouTube as well. So in this first YouTube, I wanted to talk about the battles that are taking place now in the Middle East, the self-destruction of the Arab countries at their own hands. It's not something that Israel and the Jews are guilty of. It's not something that really the United States or Russia, who are opponents in this also, are not really involved in this that much either. It's a totally internal war of 1,400 years between Shiites and Sunnis. And what is it all about? It's about domination, preeminence over who is going to control the oil and the wealth of these countries. Meanwhile, the countries are being self-destructed. And you look at countries like Libya, which is basically non-existent anymore. Syria is basically non-existent anymore. It's cantons or enclaves. Lebanon eventually, I'm afraid to say, but I'm very confident this is what's going to happen to Lebanon. Iraq is also divided into Sunni, Shiite, and Kurdish areas. And maybe some future YouTube will deal with the Persian Spring, which will deal with the breakaway of Kurdish areas, Azeri areas, and Baluchi areas of Iran. Iran is going to come apart at the seams. Turkey is 31% Alawite Shiite. It's 25% Kurdish. The Turks themselves are only 44% of the population. Turkey is going to have an explosion also very soon. They're already blaming Israel for that. Very simply, the Middle Eastern countries have Shiite and Sunni and Kurdish and Yazidi and other ethnic groups all fighting for their own interests. And it's not like the United States or Canada or Europe where everybody pulls together for the good of the country. What I wanted to do first was to talk just a little bit, to give those of you from the West who understand World War II history, give you some parallels to World War II, which are happening today between the Shiites and the Sunnis. First parallel, if you remember the history of the Japanese attack at Pearl Harbor, after this magnificent victory by the Japanese Navy and Air Force at Pearl Harbor, Admiral Yamamoto made a very startling remark. He said, "We have awakened a sleeping giant." Japan underestimated the sleeping giant, did not realize that the US was simply going to outproduce Japan. And Japan lost the war because no matter what they threw at the Americans, Americans could always outproduce them 10 to 1. Similarly, with the Nazis, when they attacked Stalin in Russia, they did not take into account that Russia had two armies. Russia had the army of the West, which was mauled by the Nazis incredibly, and then all of a sudden appears out of nowhere the Far East Army, known as the Siberians, and this Far East Army was the army that basically destroyed the Nazi war machine. In other words, no matter how good the German soldiers were in World War II, the Russians outnumbered them 10 to 1. There was no way that the Germans could defeat the Russians. And so the Russians basically outpopulated the Germans, and the Americans basically outproduced the Japanese. And America also, with the Lend-Lease, provided Russia with war materials with which to fight the Nazis. Similarly, today in the Middle East, what we see happening is we see the United States and Europe primarily backing the Sunnis, we see Russia and the Chinese and the North Koreans backing the Shiites. The Shiites are only 15%. The Sunnis are 85%. And what's happening today is that ISIS and Jabhat al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda and Khorasan and all these different Islamic groups are mobilizing with greater success volunteers to come from all over the world, including former Christians who converted to Islam in Europe or in the United States and Canada. I don't want to say it's funny, it's actually tragic, but one of the speakers of Al-Qaeda, Adam Gaddan, was a Jew who became a Muslim, and he went to fight for Al-Qaeda, and he got killed. And so you have Jews, you have Christians, you have all kinds of people that are very mixed up in their brains. They become Muslims, and they go and give up their lives fighting for the cause, Islamic cause. So what we see happening is that we have volunteers, Shiite volunteers coming from Iran, which is 70 million people, total population, of which half are Farsi or Persian, with the Shiite Iraqis, coming to fight, I would say, 1 billion Sunni Muslims. So it is obvious that the Shiites are going to lose. Added to that, the Americans, who are always outproducing everyone else, are now supplying the Sunnis, and the Russians and the Chinese, in much more moderate ways, are backing the Shiites. So it's kind of a lost cause, I believe, for the Shiites. I think that the time of the Shiites is over. The day is going to come that the Iranian Ayatollah regime is going to fall. And I'm going to say something very cynical now. I think that one of the reasons why President Obama is so in favor of removing the economic sanctions on Iran vis-a-vis the nuclear project is President Obama is a Sunni. President Obama, according to my information that my wife gave me from her broadcast that she picks up in Arabic, President Obama is a Sunni who wants to destroy the Shiite regime in Tehran. But it seems on the surface he's with the Iranians. It seems on the surface that the Saudis are very angry with him and are snubbing him. But simply the point is, if the regime if the regime is released from the economic sanctions, then what's happening is the Iranian regime, Shiite Ayatollah regime, is being given more rope with which to hang itself. In other words, President Obama's commands from his Saudi overlords is firstly to destroy the Shiite regime in Iran. How do you do that? You draw them into a bloody confrontation. You give them all the finances and weaponry they need to go to fight against the Sunnis. And eventually, when the Iranians have bled enough, the Iranian regime will be overthrown through internal processes. Added to the fact that the Iranian punishment of the Kurds in northern Iran is going to cause the Kurds of Iran to break away from the Iranian national unity and join up with the Iraqi Kurds, the Syrian Kurds, and eventually, I believe, the Turkish Kurds. The Kurds are 20 million people without a homeland except for the Kurdish autonomy in northern Iraq. I believe Kurdistan is going to become a very big, prosperous country, allied with the West, allied with Israel. Iran, meanwhile, is going to lose the Kurdish areas. Iran is going to lose the Azeri areas to the north. Azeri, it means they are from Azerbaijan. The Baluchis in the southeast of Iran are related more to the Sunnis in Pakistan. I think that Shiite Iran is going to sink like the Titanic. The Shiites of Iraq will again be suppressed by Sunnis, as it happened with Saddam Hussein. And we're going to see supposedly this fabulous victory of the Sunnis over the Shiites. The problem with that is that ISIS says that the king of Saudi Arabia has to be killed. ISIS says that the royal family has to be destroyed. ISIS says that the oil wells have to be blown up to deny the Christian world economy the oil. And this is where I believe the one world government is going to intervene. I talk about this in my new book. I believe the day will come after Shiite Islam is terminated, that Sunni Islam will self-destruct, and then, ironically, it will not be the Jews or the Christians that terminate Islam. It will be the one world government that wants steady oil prices, steady oil supplies, and steady profits. The whole problem here with Islam is that Islam does not want the world economy to thrive, except for those so-called collaborators and traders such as the King of Saudi Arabia, who does business with the Americans and with the West, hoping to save his own hide eventually. And it may be that day will come that the Saudi royal family will have to escape, because ISIS is going to take Jordan. ISIS is going to take Saudi Arabia. When ISIS takes Jordan and you see the black flags on the Jordan River, you tell me, is Israel going to be able to stand back and not do anything? So I predict that Israel eventually will move eastward across the Jordan River because of the ISIS takeover of Jordan. When ISIS takes Saudi Arabia, the one world government will say to Israel, we have to divide up Saudi Arabia. We have to secure the oil wells, the oil supplies. You Israelis, they'll say to us, you're going to help us. You're going to occupy northwest Saudi Arabia and certain parts of southern Jordan. There will be territorial contiguity between Israel, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, these areas that will be taken. Mount Sinai, which is northwest Saudi, will be under Israeli control. All these things are in my book. And I know I have to conclude. I wanted to say something to all those dear people who say to me in the churches, when are you Jews going to build the third temple? And, Moshe Dayan, when he defeated the Arabs in the Six-Day War, Moshe Dayan was the greatest military leader of the world at that time. And the Muslims believe in a God called Allah, the moon god, who they also call the greatest of all the liars and deceivers, which for the Christians is Satan. But Allah is also called Al-Makr. Al-Makr, Allah, the God of Islam, is the greatest of the liars and deceivers. When the Muslims lost the Six-Day War, they said, you know what, this liar and deceiver God is no good because he lied to us, the Arabs. The Jews and the Christians have a God called the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Let's go over to this new God who we always hated, the God of truth, the God of love. And then what happened was Moshe Dayan handed over the keys of the Temple Mount back to the Arabs, hoping to make peace with them. And the Arabs said, aha, this liar God is the greater God. Allahu Akbar means our God is greater than their God, and which of course is Satan. What happened was we lost an opportunity to defeat Islam. When people ask me, when will the Jews build the third temple? I believe it'll only happen when Mecca falls to the Jews and Christians. And, ISIS has said that they're going to destroy the Black Stone, because the Black Stone Kaaba is a pagan symbol which Muhammad, according to ISIS, had no right to adopt. Muhammad sinned gravely, according to ISIS, when he adopted the Kaaba, this pagan symbol, into the pure, pristine Islam. It might be that ISIS itself will destroy the Black Stone. This will be the end of Islam. When this happens, then the one world government will order the Jews to build the third temple in Jerusalem. We will be ordered to build the new third temple. So all these things, when are they going to happen? It's like the Spanish song, Mañana is good enough for me. It could happen at any time. My most recent book, my seventh book about ISIS in Iran, predicts the fall first of the Shiites, then the fall of Sunni Islam, and then basically the banning of Islam throughout the world. It's a victory book, especially for the Jews and Christians. I recommend that you get it. There's a lot of information, 66 years of my life and experiences in history. I have them all in this new book, Islamic Rivalries. I recommend you get it. And I hope to see you, if you're in the United States, I hope to see you in the United States in the months of June, July. And God bless everyone.